Everyone's here? We all good?
We're good to go.
Okay. So thank you, welcome back. And the plan for this afternoon, we're going to do a sort of hour, some of my ideas on some speed training. And then after that, the last hour, we can use some of the gadgets, hit some balls, we can measure some speeds and just have a bit of fun, practice some speed training. I think tomorrow the plan is to get 4 or 5 people, 3 or 4, measure up, get some data, I will collect some video, and then we'll sort of go through the process of how Steve and I will work and see if we can get a few gains tomorrow. So we will see how that goes tomorrow. So if we can pick, I think Hank's going to pick 3 or 4 people for tomorrow. Yeah. Let's see what we can get on. So speed training, this isn't really gym work. This is more to do with what you could do at the range or what you could do at home to try and faster. It's always been a bit of a dark art of long drive in that what were they doing to make themselves swing faster. Super speeds in this country, super speed, raw speed, you know what super speed sticks are, yeah? They're weighted clubs. I was the first man in Europe with them in 2014. They've been around and come out of the long drive business. They're a little bit of the jigsaw. If you look online or go onto a social media, that you'll believe that they're the only thing for speed training. They're a little bit of the jigsaw, it's not the whole jigsaw. We're just going to try and cover a whole sort of different areas of what you can teach or what you can get someone to do. So, next image please, Steve. So, when training for speed, always hit with maximum intent. So one of the simplest ways you could possibly get to add some speed to someone, as we were talking before lunch, would be just to get them to hit more balls at max speed. Very famously, some of the long drive guys might hit 300 balls a day or 180 balls a day. This isn't something that you can do tomorrow. It takes months and months and months. But even if you took it as an amateur, if they're hitting 10 balls at max intent, make it 20 the next week. And if you're working on speed, probably 2 times a week's enough, 3 times a week would be perfect. It's only small little windows of speed working on. So if you can start to up the quantity of balls you hit and up the quantity that you can hit at max intent, it will 100% drag your speed up. It's the easiest thing to do. Bryson DeChambeau has said the best thing he did was just learn to hit loads of balls at max intent. He also did this into a net, as a lot of people do, when you're not worried about the outcome of where the ball goes. So say for instance here, so say we had this set up and I was training someone, and it would depend on what I was doing that day. So say it was club speed, I'd have my flight scope up, I'd have TrackMan up here, and I'd get rid of 27 numbers, I would just have the 1 number. Because it's really difficult to get a person off worrying about where the ball goes. They're always worried about that. So in a net, and I'd only have that up. So say it was a club speed day and we'd be working on that over a few weeks. The next day or the next week we might have a ball speed week. I'd get rid of all the numbers and I'd only have ball speed up there. Angle of attack, whatever I was working on, spin axis on the ball, I would only have 1 number. Trouble is when you start having 28 numbers, especially people who love numbers, they start looking at all the numbers. You really want to bring it down to 1 number. If someone was coming in and they were really interested in working on speed, say over the winter, I want to know a few things. I want to know their normal, I just want to get a baseline number from them. I want to know their normal swing speed. I want to know their max swing speed. There's a whole subset of golfers who don't hit it anywhere near their potential. What they'll do is they'll hit it way below that just to try and play safe with it. Everyone has an athletic ceiling, everyone. So if someone comes into me and they're swinging 95 miles an hour and they want to say they want to do long drive, the likelihood is they're never going to do long drive. So for instance, Martin Borgmeyer, when he came to see me, his start speed I think was 143, not swinging very well. So everyone has, but one thing I've learned over the years is speed is a skill. It is a skill that can be learned. Everyone can only go so high, but everyone can add speed to their swing. So I'd want to know normal speed, max speed. I'd want to know the speed of their left arm. I was talking to someone pre-lunch. So there's much science to prove. If you measure someone's speed with their arm, I would do it on a PRGR, but you can try this later. And I want some swings. Just got to be a bit careful doing 1 arm swings. You could be prone to injury, especially if you do it with a heavier club. So I've got a light stick here. I want to know their left arm speed. I then want to know their right arm speed. 95% of the time, the person's left arm speed will be faster than their right arm speed. Obviously, that's if you're right-handed. The objective would to make both arms faster and the same speed. That becomes vitally important. If one person's right arm doesn't work as well as their left, speed it up, try and get both up. If you have a deficiency in one arm, it can cost you speed. So I would actually I can show you later. I have a chart that I'll give to everyone, and it will have these notes on it and what speed they're doing. Also, I want to know what time of day they're practicing. Everyone's faster in the afternoon than the morning. It's the Olympic record idea that all records are broken later on. That also applies on tour. That stat has now come out. People are much faster in the afternoon than they are in the morning. I'd also want to track how many balls they're hitting. So there needs to be a structure to it, as you just go and just hit balls, yeah? How many balls they're hitting, what time of day they're hitting. I'd also want to know extraordinary events. So say they suddenly get a jump of speed. I want to know what happened on that day, what they were doing. If you're not training with a radar of some sort to measure, you're wasting your time as well, in brutal honesty. So, as a silly story, 2014, I sent a guy pro away to work with these over the winter, come back, he looked $1 million. He'd been training all winter, he was looking great, he getting himself swinging it great. Came back, he'd gone from like 110 to 125 over the winter. But when he came back, as soon as I put a ball down there, he just went back to his exact same speed again. Exactly the same. So the flaw with these a little bit is that you're not actually hitting anything. There's nothing to strike, there's nothing to make contact with. So when you're measuring extraordinary events, so what happened there, you might get a different swing feeling or something that felt different that day in the way you were training. Just had a good day, you might make a little note of it. So if you're tracking, now the other thing if you're not tracking is that you might feel you're getting faster and faster and faster, but when you actually measure it, it isn't. And what I would do, I'd always control the speed. I want to know I have control over the speed and see what they're going with. And I quite often ask them, what do you reckon, faster, slower? They'll go faster, no, much slower, and vice versa. So I want them to sense what they're doing is making them swing faster or slower. You can also, one thing I have seen with super speeds is that you could actually have, we were talking about footwork and moving. You could send someone away on a speed session for a month and come back, they're actually moving quite well. And I sort of say, I've done this before, have you had a lesson off someone because you're moving really well? And it wasn't me. No, I've just been working with those. So sometimes training for speed actually improves the quality of the motion and the movement. So training, and this first one, when training for speed, always hit with maximum intent, but I would track left hand, right hand, normal sweep, spin speed. I'd also want to track if they were using some of my gadgets, which ones worked for them, which ones didn't. But then if I was looking back to where we were earlier, is there one bit of the swing they're doing well, or not so well, I'll train that, then I'd re-measure that again. But if you're trying to do it without a radar, you've got no idea. That is a must. I don't like telling people to buy things, but if you haven't got one, you're guessing. So, I've half alluded to this already, are speed sticks all you need? They help. They help. So for some people, they're really good. The worst, I don't know if anyone else has been using them for training. Anyone else, Scott? So the worst golfer you have who doesn't have much success at pros. So amateurs, say an amateur's going to train with him and he gets to the weekend, he hasn't got to make a cut or she hasn't got to make a cut. They're quite happy to smash it down there. They're just playing recreational golf. But very often with a better player, you have less results because you might get them fast, but when the ball's there, they'll just go back to their default speed. They can't break out, they can't get through the glass ceiling. So they help, they certainly help with higher handicaps. If you teach a lot of very good players, they quite often can train, get fast, but put a ball there and they won't be 1 mile an hour faster because they can't break through that sort of glass ceiling they've set up. Next one there, please. Now some of these are just sort of my own feelings. If you go on to, say, a super speed website, if you buy any sticks, they have their own protocols, they call them, where you follow your own pattern of training. I don't like the one on the knees at all. I think it isn't very good for your back. I think the left-handed swing version is quite good in the law of deceleration. So deceleration muscles, why are they important? So someone getting into long drive will smash the shaft off their back quite a lot dangerously, go boom, and it'll fly off anywhere. The idea being, if you're in a car and say that's a brick wall and I'm going to drive up really fast up to the brick wall, if my brakes are good, I'll drive fast for as long as I can because I know I can stop. If your brakes aren't good, you'll go slowly. So having muscles that allow you to slow down quickly, which long drive guys have to learn how to bring that back, can help you to speed up. So I like all the drills they do on there, apart from the one kneeling down, which I don't think is great for your back. I like to start and finish light, so this is just my own version of this. Over years of doing it, you might find your own. So I'd start with the light stick and I'd finish with the light stick. I quite often like to do that training fresh, and I'd like that to do that before I start hitting a lot of balls. So as to wake the nervous system up. Do you know before you play, quite often you warm up with heavy clubs. So you have a heavy club. Do you do? Is that finished thing? Or you put two clubs together to get you to move to loosen up before the game.
It used to be.
Okay.
In the 90s.
But quite often people have two clubs and they put them together. That won't make you fast. You're much better to warm up with a light stick before you go and play. So if you're teaching someone who's got a tournament, don't go heavy and give them the heavy one of these. Give them the light one. It shocks your central nervous system, especially if they're teeing off in the morning. And one of the things I sent you some information on, Steve, is that if you're teaching tour players, it's very difficult to train in the season when you play in the 4-day event. Hopefully, if you make the cut, so it's really difficult. So I can send out to Hank actually some training advice for in season for pros if you're teaching good players and pros. No technique thoughts. So if you're training for speed, don't really think about technique. It's just all out speed. You need to get away from worrying about things. Only power thoughts, so you're only just trying to hit it as fast as you can. Be fast past the ball. This is an idea a little bit. If I was on a radar and it measures, I honestly don't know whether it's measuring here. I don't know whether it's measuring at the point of strike. So I would be aware where you're generating the most speed so it's at the right place. And as I said just now, I'd like you to train to kick off your session. Back a little bit, I keep flitting between subjects, but one of the biggest things you can do, as I said, is up the quantity of shots you hit at max speed. And we know that unusual for speed training, because normally less is more. If you can up the quantity of balls you hit in the max speed, it will drag up your playing speed, as I said earlier. The way to do it, though, is start with 10 or 15. So say you had a radar, and this then becomes very important from depleting your central nervous system. So say I'm swinging this 140 miles an hour, I wish. Say I was swinging it at 140 and I get to swing 13 and I start dipping. I'm starting going on the way down. I shut it down, I don't work anymore because that's my central nervous system telling me I'm done for the day. 2 weeks later, I'm now up at swing 27. Then I'm starting to peel off. So then I go the next week, I'm up at swing 35. The second it starts going down, you shut it down and go and work on ball speed, hitting the middle, some technique stuff. So you just need to track it. And again, if you don't have a radar and you overhit, one of the worst things in speed training is you'll overhit and burn yourself out. When people buy speed sticks, what they do is they don't bother, it's typically blokes as well, they don't bother going on the website and following it, they'll just do it for 14 days straight, 21 days straight, and then they'll put them in the cupboard for the rest of their life, they'll never come out again. So you need to give yourself recovery time. If you do not recover, you will not be able to build speeds back up again. So it shouldn't fatigue but energise you on the basis that that's pre-hit symbols. Put the next screen there, please, Steve. Don't kneel down, that's just my idea. The more risk than reward. There's some people say it's very damaging to the back to kneel down. I work in pyramids. When we go on, we'll see a pyramid or one of my sort of suggested pyramids. So what we'll see from that is that start light, get heavy, finish light. And then you make the pyramid bigger. Start light, get heavy, finish light. And Hank, these are being shared to everyone, these slides, so you can just go through mine. I've bespoke that to every single person though, but these are just my ideas, what I've got the most results from. The more advanced you get, the bigger the pyramid, as I just said. Work opposite sides, helps to stay balanced and helps the deceleration pattern as I just described from a swinging fast that you can slow down. Get complex. What I mean by get complex, as soon as you can move it, use drill. So, say for instance there, we're going back to what we said earlier with Steve, we're no good P5 here forward. Okay, and I'm going to start just from the area there, just hitting shots, just at that. Say I'm no good in the first phase on the way down here. I'll be trying to really get my hands working quickly. So what I then would do is bring these in, not just in following the training advice, I'd bring it on a bit of the swing I don't like. You know, whether it's one of these devices, so we're just doing that. So maybe I'm not working the club away quick enough. Boom, I train with this because it's lighter. So I actually use it beyond just the training protocols. I would use it as part of me trying to improve one of the movements I don't like in the swing. Steve? So here's one of my pyramids. So what we'd see here is week one, every third day you need those rest days. I'd like to do it in my own idea of it. I like to do it 80%, 90%, and then 4 all out. From a sequencing point of view, quite often when you're doing it, you might find the 90% goes faster than the 100%, interestingly. So 90% might work better because the sequence are better, your timing's better. So it's interesting when you play around with speeds, the all-out swings don't always often go faster than 90%. It just gets the pattern of movement really, really good. So every third day, and then light, medium, light, starting light, finishing light, and that's how the opposite side. This is just, as I say, a framework that you can get people to work around. If I was teaching children, to go for speed, I would make it very competitive. And me and Steve do some work for Reed School, don't we? Yeah. And I want to get those baseline numbers. So we'll get all the kids in. There'll be a mixture of ages there, and we measure them. The one with the slowest speed is always gutted because they've got the slowest speed. But in a way, if you compare them together, then that's the person that will work hard. So what I would have then at the end of it is I'd have fastest swings. Next week, we'd have another go at fastest swings. Then we'd have the most improved. So speed training for kids needs to be fun. So if I would add it, so I'd have most improved that week, most biggest increase, and actually make it real fun for kids as they won't work at it. So I'll have a table where I'd actually be tracking who was faster, who was slower, just G them up a little bit and make it a bit of fun. Week 2, you can see the pyramids now got bigger. This is what I meant about bigger pyramids. Again, starting light, finishing light, medium, heavy, driver. So, why have I got driver in there? So, this isn't my golf club, but this is my golf club. There's almost as much science to say that you might get as much merit out of swinging your own driver as you do speed sticks. I don't use the medium speed stick hardly at all, because this is my driver, my shaft, my head, it's my club, much more so than it isn't actually my club. So there's much merit to say that actually practicing swinging your driver could almost do as much as speed sticks. It's cheaper anyway as well, yeah? So you've got to buy a set of speed sticks. So if you wonder, that's why I would implement driver, and I said I would change this person to person. So there's driver in there, and I like swinging my driver. And I like to see if it's going to swing a bit quicker. Next one, please, Steve. And this will just go on, and there's the pyramid getting bigger. So, starting light, finishing light. And then I might mix it around, and this would be something that I'll maybe go on with Steve. Steve would say, I don't like the lateral movement here on the way down. So from your point of view, Steve, the force is going the other way. I'd have it early enough, and we'd put a step swing into it. I might do a double step swing. Anyone see Dr. Kwan's stuff? Anyone seen that? He loves a step, yeah, so he's back. So, but step swings can really move the speed up a little bit. I know generally, if you get someone to step spin with a super speed, it generally has 1 or 2 miles an hour. So that would be a little bit more bespoke possibly to the person that we're doing it there. At the top, 45, 60-second rest between sets, 150-second rest before the step swing. And that's week 3 to 5. Week 6 to 8, the pyramid's got really big now. We've introduced the driver in there a couple of times. And this is how I would get the, if it was kids or an adult was doing it, I'd get them to sort of track their own, see how they're going. I want to know their speeds as they go along. So introducing jet sticks, this is the thing with the chains on it. They're easy to build yourself. You can make them, you can buy them, but you can make them yourself. I would add that to the pyramid, okay, and it's a great addition to your speed protocol. That also does measure on the PRGR. It gives a really fast speed because the ball's slinging forward past you, but you can get a measurement out of it. I told you that really helps with angular work, lag and timing of the release and getting speed out to the club. A great addition to a protocol, add to the pyramid, but a great priming method, so just gets your body ready to go. Then make sure you apply counter force. That gadget actually pulls you a little bit this way. So as you throw it down, it's pulling you, so you're making a counter force, so it can actually help you to make an adjustment in the other direction. And get more complex as soon as you can move it. So again, if you're struggling in your release pattern, I would get it from here, B5, and I would actually then start to sling it out there. So I'd bring it in again on the bit that I might not like. It might be the person sort of gets to the top and then casts it. It's a really good gadget that doesn't cast it. So I would bring that back in as part of it. Next page then. So, back to super speeds, which I do like, but they're a little bit of the jigsaw. against them, and this is then goes back to the players who aren't really getting any improvements. Your brain's not getting ready for impact. So you could get. So this is how I sort of see it 8 years later after having a set. I think they're really good for building usable speed, but how are you going to get the usable speed from this into hitting the ball? Because most good players will just go back and default back to their existing speed. So the question there, we need to hit something. So Speedball is this gadget. I've got one up here so we can have a look at this after, so we can play with these, yeah? I've got an old club. So here's some pads. How I started, so Joe Miller, maybe 10 years ago, at a golf club, because in the buggies, you know, people leave their head covers in the buggy. We've got about 3,000 head covers. So I started hitting head covers. And then what I found is that if I could add another head cover, so you then got 2 head covers as a resistance, then 3 head covers, 4 head covers, 5 head covers. And we started to be able to measure it. Again, PRGR will measure it, my flight scope will measure the impact. And we'll have a bit of fun later on that, here you go, here's a statement, someone's going to beat it, but 95% of the people I've ever measured cannot practice swing faster than hitting something. Cannot. And I can't believe it. They cannot believe they can't practice swing faster. The other 5% can't work out, the other 95% can't practice swing faster than hitting it. So what you could do is you could get someone doing a practice swing with their driver, put a pad down, and they will hit the pad much harder than they do hitting fresh air. So back to the head cover story. So I was getting really great gains out of this, really trying to, and if you think in other sports, my dad used to box a lot. You've always got to box on pads. There's always something you hit. You need the exact time of when you're going to put maximum force. Your whole body system needs to be ready for impact, ready to go. So just swishing at fresh air is good for speed, but it doesn't ever come to anything. But your brain's not ready for impact. The other thing with, I don't know if the face is square or not. There's no face. So anyway, I thought I'd invented something, and then found out that someone had invented pads anyway. And there's a few of these on the market, but these are the ones I like the most. They're super speed pads, or sorry, to a tempo, speedball pads. Now, they're really good, and we can have a go at whacking a few of those later and we'll measure up. Again, the size of the pad, so as I was doing 1 head cover, 2 head cover, 3 covers, the size of the pad and its resistance will make you work harder to get through it. Also, in this case here, you're going to have to square the club up. And this is the original gadget that came with, which I'll tell them there, so have a look at that. So that is a speedball. So I started hitting that, and I sort of like the idea of it. But again, it doesn't look like my golf club. So there's some Velcro on that, and when the Velcro impacts on that Velcro, they sticks on it. So then I thought, well, I might as well make a hitting object out of a club. So what I did is I took an old club, and I've got Velcro on the face of that. Now, I've only got Velcro because at the range at my club, if you hit the pad out there, because it's so busy, you're not going to go and get the pad every shot, because you're going to get yourself killed. So it will stick to it. They're really good for working in the gym. So I had a guy just before the World Long Drive Championship, a senior guy, was going on holiday with his wife. He must have driven his wife mad. I gave him a pad for the week to work on because he couldn't get down the gym. And if you do use them indoors, you just got to warn everyone, because if you hit one, it will scare the life out of anyone around you. So super speeds are good, but they're a bit of the jigsaw. Can you then take the usable speed that you've got from super speeds and put it into hitting something? For me, it's the magic bridge over to actually hitting a golf ball. So then, for us, from my point of view now, going on all these years later, you need something to hit. If you're just hitting fresh air to start, but if you're not hitting anything and you've got no idea of any impact, your body's not preparing for it. And again, you can buy these, but I've made loads. Me and Martin made this one. So Martin bought my. So the trouble with pads is that sometimes not strong enough for him because he's too strong. So the size of the pad and the resistance will be dependent on the strength of the golfer. So he's got a big towel wrapped around a lump of sponge, and he'll just power this into the wall. He's got his own indoor base, so he doesn't care whether it's flying anywhere. But resistance and impact become vital to train. So here he is, speedball. This is one of the clubs that me and Martin were using, just an old second-hand one. There's plenty of old clubs sitting around. And then just train. I've actually also taken 2 clubs. I've got an old wooden club that I've used, and I've drilled a little bit of weight out of it. because this hasn't been made on the market yet, but I like the idea of it. Just drilled a little bit of weight, but I can hit shots with this wooden club. So now I'm actually hitting balls with a slightly underweighted club. If you make a club, if you ever make one, don't make it either lighter or heavier than 8 to 10%, as it throws your whole kinematic sequence out. So when I see people swinging alignment rods, that doesn't work, it's too light. Throws the whole sequence out. So I've now got a light club and a heavy club. I've just got an old metal club that I've put some lead tape on it. And what you can actually do then, they become hittable against the pad, and you can actually hit balls with them. For me, that makes much more sense, because there's no doubt that overload and overspeed training works, because it's worked in loads of different sports, but I think it would be better if there was something to hit, in my opinion. So, is overspeed all you need? General rules for impact training, so if you are, hit with maximum intent. Stick to the 80-90 all-out pattern with those pads. But you must get to the all-out pattern of the 4 last shots. If you don't push hard enough, you will not change the number. You will not change. All of those must be measured on radar, because you don't know what's fast or slow, and what feels fast doesn't feel fast sometimes. Sometimes you feel you're hitting it really hard, it's just not faster. Use impact training to extend the speed session. So I would start off with the super speeds, spark the central nervous system into it, and then do some pad training. And then from that point, therefore, take a climbing from the sticks. Utilise one-handed swings. Now, one-handed swings, as we talked about earlier, so if someone hadn't done them before, I'd start with really light sticks one-handed, and I'd just start to swish them one-handed, and I'll measure on the left-handed, right-handed speeds. Get the deficiency in the arm, find it out. So then what you'll do is, as you get stronger, so I then would up the ante, I then start one-handed, left-handed, right-handed swings with these. So 1, 2. Then actually what we get to is I then, and again, I would be careful, this is only from experience because I injured a couple of people doing this years ago, is that once they really get going, and I'm not going to do the same here, what you can then do is that they then, once they've got used to it, they can then start to do it one-handed. You see how soft I did that, because I don't want to injure myself, but you can't jump into that. That's where you want to get to, training one-handed, but you can't go to that. You've got to go through stage 1, 2, 3, 4, because you can easily injure yourself doing that. So basically this is this gadget here, which works brilliantly coming down. After 3/4 swings, a Hideki and Matsuyama idea. So you start here, as we talked about earlier, and drive that through. Resistance makes you work harder, and you can't move the thing without some good footwork. For speed, use between heavy sets. For technique, use before hitting. So if I was working because I wasn't moving well through the ball. Test resistance with easy swing and then go all out. So what I said earlier was that the length of the swing, the length of the scarf, this is just a scarf attached to it. You could attach a scarf to your golf club. The length of the scarf depends how much resistance you can take. And that is a must. Speed is created by going after it. And that's why you've got to get through the point of worrying too much about where it's going as you're starting just working on speed. So how I would always do it, so if a long driver or an amateur or professional come along, I would start the first bit, club speed, club speed, club speed, club speed, club speed. Once I've got to the speed I want with them hitting, then I go ball speed, ball speed, ball speed, ball speed for the next few weeks. Then I go launch and spin, and accuracy. Club speed first, ball speed second, then it is straight. That's how I'd always do it.
Interestingly, with some feedback from Ollie, I think it was on a recent podcast after his win, he said one of the biggest things, breakthroughs for him was to actually, was when he actually wasn't worried about people watching him on the tour range hitting all out. So again, don't be frightened of not hitting it straight, because he was like, oh my God, all these guys are going to see me hitting it like this. Well, actually, it's 6 all-out swings. It doesn't matter where they go. He's just going on the quad number, just making sure that club's moving faster. So that was the big hurdle to overcome first. Don't be frightened of the outcome. We're not going for outcome other than club head speed, not where the ball goes.
And we know at that point he's not going to play like that.
No.
He's just practicing at max speed.
Max speed.
And we know that the idea of max speed and playing speed, pushing that, it's dragging this up. And it shouldn't be, when you're training for speed, that the playing speed shouldn't feel like you're trying to kill it. It's just been dragged up 10 by the fact that you brought the other one up.
Yeah.
It isn't about playing at that. So what you were saying that Steve's perfect. We know he wasn't worried about what he's struggling. He's not going to play like that, so he drops from 128. Was he playing 117?
Yeah, 116, 117.
Okay, so he's dropping 10 to play.
Yeah.
Joe Miller is probably the straightest man I've ever measured on the flight scope, and I've talked to some really good players. That man drives it pure at 140. So if you play with him, the other thing with speed training devices like the PIGR, to sort of switch subjects, no one takes a TrackMan or a quad hardly ever on the course or the PRGR, so they don't really know what their course swing speed's like. So Joe Miller, who can swing at 155, he plays awesome golf at 141, 142. That sounds crazy, but he looks like he's in like this. And the man is super straight. I told you he's the straightest man I've ever measured.
Yeah.
But he doesn't play golf at 150, and this is what you should do. I said Bryson earlier. Bryson this year at the Worlds was about 213 ball speed. So him playing at 190, which he does on tour, he's not even trying to hit it. That's him just taking it right back down to playing mode. So you won't feel how much recovery your nervous system needs. So I said if you're training, rest periods are vital. So if you don't rest, your central nervous system gets burnt out. So really, I said earlier, 2 times a week or 3 times a week, you don't really know until you've tried it. Josh Kosh, who's a great long driver and a coach, Dana Darquist's right-hand man in America. We know Josh is one of the top 5. He only needs to speed train twice a week. Joe Miller would do it 5 times a week. A tour player in the winter 3 times a week. So it just depends when you start to measure what's the best way.
How would you miss the normal gym? If you say that you like 3 times a week to speed training, how would you miss it going to the gym?
So I would do that on the other days. So if you're a gym, as I say, I'm not a gym expert, but I would do that either before I wouldn't do it. Sorry, the one thing I know is I wouldn't do it after I went to the gym. So I could do that before I went to the gym, or on the other day before I went to the gym, or the other day apart from that. I would never do it afterwards. So if you had someone who was training, whether it was a long driver or a tour player, if they've had a leg day and they've been in the gym working their legs, they'll be 2, 3, 4 miles an hour slower, 100%. So even if they come in, I saw the speeds. I said, "You've been down the gym on the legs today?" "Yeah, how do you know?" "Well, you've lost all your speed." So you have to do it either before you go to the gym or the other day from the gym. If you try and do it after the gym, you're pretty much done.
Didn't Martin mention last week that you'll know that one of his first records he broke when he got over 230, wasn't it after like 2 days of rest? He'd obviously been working a lot up to that point, but he had rested a couple of days. I wasn't expecting big things, come back and started hitting and broke one of his records for the first time.
Yeah, so that's a bit of trial and error as well, what you're saying. So before, he will not hit balls 2 days before a long drive event. He'll go heavy on the 3rd day before, then go rest, which is difficult to do because the grid's there, everyone's practicing, and it's really difficult not to want to go and hit shots. Last year he gassed out in the final, he came 3rd last year, he ran out of energy. It's quite difficult going from Europe over to America to compete. So this year, this is how dedicated he is. He moved to America for 4 years to try and win the world, 4 years, for 4 months to try and win the world championship. That's how obsessed he is with it. For the month before, he had 2 days off, then hit for 4 days, because the long drive unfortunately goes over 4 days. So you'll have 126 go down, 132 down to 64, 2064, down to 32, down to 16. So he practiced for the month before exactly how the tournament week was going to come up. But that's how much he's into the detail of it. It's not just about. But I would say that with a pro event, if you were going to do speed, the thing I'll share with Hank is you want to go train heavy on the Monday, do some speed stuff Tuesday, shut it down Wednesday.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Wait for the tournament because you'll run out. You do too much.
Yeah.
And that's it. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. And what we're going to do now, we'll set up over here, if that's all right. Hank, we can get some balls. Any questions? Sorry.
What kind of warm-up do you do for the speed train? You can't do it like just
Yeah, so
on the pole.
if you really, the long drive guys would get a roller out and do a whole load of stretching from that. Normally from that speed session, I would start with just some light sticks. I would do a little bit of that, just easy stuff, left-handed, right-handed, before I then set up for it. But it's only 5 minutes, not a long warm-up. Just a few easy little swings beforehand until I feel I'm ready to go. But yeah, you don't. Long drive is very different from playing. If it was long drive and you would try to go for it, it's a bit like if you turn up to a long drive event, someone says, "Hit it 400 yards for me, can you?" That takes about 50 minutes of warming up to hit it for. But everyone asks the same thing, so you need that. So that's a different thing. But if it was just getting ready with the speed sticks, I'd have a 5-minute warm up, just like little light swings, just till I feel I was ready to go.
And you was mentioning about for most amateur golfers, recreational golfers, if they had the lightweight stick, just to do half a dozen of those before they hit the first tee shot, something like that.
Oh, 100%.
That's been scientifically proven,
Scientifically
tested
proven,
and
yeah. That most people go and try and swing something heavier, but this should be lighter, especially in the morning when your food hasn't been digested and your brain's not awake yet. It will spark you up much better than going heavy.
Yeah. Okay.
Any more questions? So I think what we'll do, we'll get the radar up. Take me a couple of minutes to do. Hank, where do you want us to hit balls? In this bit over here?
I don't know. We can also hit in
the simulators,
yeah? Yeah. So.
Okay, so I'll clear some of this out, and we'll just sort of collect. Does anyone know their numbers? Does anyone? I mean, they've got it just hitting balls. They probably know what their driver is. So it'll be interesting to see. We'll just play around with some practice swings, max in 10, normal speed, one-handed, left-handed. We'll just collate some numbers. This is what I would do. And then we'll take it from there. Yeah, and then obviously we'll do much more detailed stuff because Steve's got his plates and we'll have a measure up in the video tomorrow and see where we go with that from a teaching point of view, yeah?